Hey adventurers, so today is going to be our wrap-up for July. First book that I finished in July was Secret Project number 3, which is titled Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, of course by Brandon Sanderson, since he's the one who did the secret projects. What are my thoughts on this one briefly? Basically, I really enjoyed this one. I can tell that I understand that it's probably not the best that he's written, but it's probably my favorite that I've read since about Words of Radiance. So I really did enjoy this one quite a bit, and there was a lot to do with art in it, and I really like that as well. Okay, number 2 is More Than a Vampire by J.R. Carroll. It's a self-published book. It is his debut novel, and it is the first book in his More Than Humans universe. And I'd previously read More Than a Gunslinger, which is his second book that he released. It's a standalone set in that same universe. But this More Than a Vampire is the first book in the major series that he's writing in this universe. I enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy it as much as I enjoyed More Than a Gunslinger, and that's largely, I think, to do with vampires aren't really my biggest. I don't love vampires that much. They're fine. But I did enjoy reading the book well enough.
So one of the first books I finished in July was Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. I've started this early in May. It just took me a long June. Let's try June. I started this early in June, and it's, as you guys know, it's a really large book. I listened to it on audiobook for the most part, and I really can appreciate the ability Victor Hugo has to be a very beautiful wordsmith. That being said, look at the size of this thing. I will say that there is stuff in here that did not affect the story one bit, and we could have gone without that and been just fine. Now, he's a classic author. He's a classic, he's known as, his book is a classic, so he has that reputation of being an author of a classic, and so we let him get away with things like this, where if this was a modern book, I might not have completed it. That being said, I do appreciate what he says in those times. He has some really subtle bits of wit that are really humorous when you can pick up on them, and the way he words things is very eloquent, something that is oftentimes lost in writing today. But overall, it almost drains the story. As in, like, it's so much information, and then what's the actual story is there, and it's in all of this, but it's just a little bit and all of it. So it was a lot to get through. I'm really proud of myself for finishing it. It was a very long audiobook. And I think that I would like to reread it one day, like the hard copy, but probably like when I'm 80 and have nothing else to do. So.
The next book that I read is another self-published novel. This one is part of the SPF B09 contest, and this is Heliostrope by Palmer Pickering. This is currently, and I don't know if it's forever planned to be, but it's currently a standalone where it starts out and you're following, the main character is a retired warrior. He is now doing stonework. He's building a beautiful mosaic for the queen. And it starts out and you're just sitting there really enjoying just watching this guy put all these little pieces of rock together, and it's really fun. And then from there it goes into the actual story and it gets away from that. But it's just a really nice book in many ways, and I just really enjoyed a lot of it. Some cool magic stuff going on, some cool themes and explorations going on in it. Not my favorite book that not my favorite book that I've read of all time, but I did really enjoy it for a lot of the things that were in it.
I also read The Pharaoh's Daughter by Misu Andrews. I really liked this book. I saw it at the bookstore and I started reading the synopsis, and it follows basically the Egyptian daughter of Pharaoh who is known to be Moses' mother. So there's a lot of creative liberties taken in the story because there's a lot we don't know. But overall, the author did a really fantastic job of bringing in historical accuracy to the best of her knowledge. She really dove into history and little verses of the Bible that mentioned the daughter of Pharaoh and who she could have been in the timeline of history, lining up with when the Egyptians would have exodused out of Egypt. The Israelites would have exodus out of Egypt. So it was really, really good. I also liked how the author handled the main character coming from an Egyptian background, which is a pagan background, and being influenced by the Israelites and the people she was around who were the slaves at the time. It was a really fascinating story, and I loved it. I just really appreciated how the author handled so many different aspects of it, and it was a really enjoyable read.
The next book that I finished is The Wormling Horde, which is book 7 of the Rune Lords by David Farland. This is a series that I've been reading one book a month over the past 7 months at this point, or 8 months because we skipped May. No, we skipped April.
Who did?
Me and Nico
Oh,
from Nico's
okay.
Book Reviews. You should know this. Anyways, I am still really, really loving this series. Once again, this third book is not my favorite of the... So it's split into 2 arcs. Books 1 through 4 is an arc. Books 5 through 8 is an arc. And the third books in each of these arcs aren't my favorite. They kind of have a little bit of middle book syndrome going on in them, but that doesn't mean that they're bad. They're actually still really good books for... I mean... If the other books are 5-star books, these ones are 4-star books. I don't know if that's exactly my rating, but that's the type of thing that it is. So, again, this one's just exploring more of the magic, asking more of the same types of questions that we've been having, and having the same types of conversations, and trying to get to a point where we can wrap up this series. Yeah, that's what I'm going to say about that one. Let's see. The next one is Luma Hedge. This is a Redwall novel by Brian Jakes. This one is one that I remembered absolutely nothing about until I read it, and then I remembered everything about it, and I was like, oh, okay, this is the story that we're reading. But I did really enjoy it. It's not my favorite of the Redwall books. There's a lot of things in it that I really enjoy, but it's I mean, I love the quest aspect. I love getting to go to Luma Hedge and spending some time on that journey, because anytime we get to go to Luma Hedge there's very much a journey that goes along with that, and I really enjoy that as well. Anything else stop there? Do one more? The next one, okay, The Gunslinger by Stephen King. This is the first book in the Dark Tower series. I listened to this on audiobook. I don't know why. I think it was just I needed an audiobook and it was available type thing. And it's one that I've needed to read for a long time. It's one that I've had this copy of for a long 2-3 years now, something like that. And I wasn't sure what I would think about this, because the one other Stephen King book that I read I didn't care for. But I did really enjoy it. It's dark. there's some strange things happening and some dark things going on in this book. But I liked the idea, and I liked the concepts that were introduced in this series, in this book, and I think that, I don't know, because I know he changes a little bit in the following books, how he wrote the story, but I think that I will really enjoy this series if I can continue to read it, but I have to get the next books.
Okay, so the other book, one of the other books I read in July was... Did I read this in July? Yeah, Good Boundaries and Goodbyes by Lisa Turkhurst. And this is a nonfiction that I didn't remember placing on hold, because it was one of the situations where it was like 20 weeks later, and I don't even know what time of my life, what was happening 20 weeks ago. Anyhow, I placed it on hold and I listened to the audiobook, and it was really challenging. It was a really good book. It talks about the importance of setting boundaries in personal relationships, from romantic to working relationships to just friendships, and what violating those boundaries can look like and how that can negatively affect a relationship overall. So it was very challenging to put a lot of things into perspective for me, and was one of the books that I read with a solemn expression.
The next one I have is The Bad Beginning, which is the first book in the series of Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket. I don't know who the official or who the actual author is.
It's Lemony Snicket.
I know, that's the official author. But this is one that, again, I just needed something to read, and it happened to be available, and so I listened to it. And it was, I knew the story because the Netflix adaptation was very faithful adaptation, and so reading the book is like, oh, this is just the show that I already watched, and I liked the show. I thought the show was well done, and I liked the book. I thought that was fun as well. But I don't really have a whole lot more to say about the book. The next one I listened to, I did listen to it, but this is probably, oh, that's nasty. It's a fake one too. It can't even come off.
Don't pick it.
Maybe. I don't know.
Those ones are...
I don't know if it's fake or not. I can't tell.
No, that's permanent.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Anyways, I read The Devil in the White City by Eric Larson. This is probably my book of the year at this point. I know there's still 5 months to go, but there's a good chance that this will be my book of the year. And it's a historical nonfiction, but it's told in novel form. So it's told as a story with I don't know how else to explain it. It's told as a story with a whole lot of the events surrounding the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, which is known as the Columbian World Expo, and basically it changed the course of America, and it changed the course of fairs, and a whole bunch of other things were introduced during this fair, and the way that they went about creating this fair and everything. It was just super interesting. The secondary storyline, the part that's the devil, so the White City is the Chicago World's Fair, and then the devil part is a character who is a serial killer that was operating around the events of this fair. And so that part was a little bit dark, but the story, just the whole story and the way it was formatted and built together, just excellent storytelling, and the fact that it is true, it's real events, makes it all the better. The next one I have is Many Waters, which is the 4th book in the series by Madeleine L'Engle, starting with the Wrinkle in Time, and this is my least favorite of the series, by far.
Her books go like decreasing.
Well, I liked 1, 2, and 3 quite a bit for different things. And then this book 4, for one, it doesn't focus on Charles Wallace and Meg. It focuses on the twins, which isn't, I don't have an issue with that. I like getting to explore some other characters or some side characters in big series. But what it does is it takes you back in time to before Noah's flood. And so the scientific concepts that were being played with I enjoyed, but the storytelling I don't feel like was that great in this one. And that's unfortunate, because storytelling is, I like to say that story must come first. And unfortunately I don't think it did in this one. It was, the romance came first, and that was a little weird. So, what's next? A Prelude to Ashes, another short one here. This is the prequel to A Touch of Light by Thiago Abdallah. So A Prelude to Ashes is set about 100 years before the events of A Touch of Light, and it introduces us to the world, it introduces us to some of the characters, and just helps us to understand the political situation of how we got to where we are in the events of A Touch of Light. And it was short, it was a novella. I don't love novellas because I feel like we often don't get a complete story in them, but I also haven't read that many. So this one was fine, and it was good enough to keep me engaged, but it wasn't my favorite thing I've ever read by any means.
So I also read Farm to Trouble by Amanda Flower. This is a new series. It's not the mystery, the flowery one that I've been reading. I can't remember what the other one was called. This is a new series, not new to her, new to me. And I didn't enjoy it as much. I liked it because I like the lighthearted mystery type of book, and it was kind of what I was in the mood for right then. I didn't connect with the main character in this one, and so my enjoyment level of it just wasn't as high as it could have been. I kept getting frustrated by her choices. It was stereotypical detective, don't do that, that's stupid type of work. And overall, the story turned out well, and the story was crafted well. And I was surprised by who the murderer was. It took me off guard, which is not actually that difficult, but I was surprised. I didn't guess that. So I have mixed feelings about it. I think my main issue is that I just didn't personally connect with the main character.
So then I listened to, this was kind of a spur of the moment. I had no plans to it. I didn't even know the book existed. Apparently I did, because I've talked about it, or I had it on my to be read on Goodreads. But it was Fantasties. I believe it's by George MacDonald is the author. And this is one that Liam from Liam's Lyceum was like, hey, do you want to read this with me? And I'm like, sure, why not? So we listened to this one. It was on LibriVox for free. And so not the greatest recordings on LibriVox, but that's whatever. I didn't get as much out of this as I needed to. I don't fully understand everything that I read. What I did understand, I really enjoyed. It was very much an adventure. It was very much a kind of a portal fantasy. In fact, it was a portal fantasy. You go into into the fairyland, whatever you want to call that, and you just go through the woods having one adventure after another until you eventually come out the other side changed. and I really liked a lot of that aspects. There was some Arthurian tie-ins, there's lots of mythology tie-ins. I did really enjoy it, but I definitely need to reread it, and I don't know that I can even do a review of it as I currently sit without rereading it, because I don't know that I understand it enough to review it. Then I finally, so this is my physical read of the month, the one and only book that I physically read. I did read A Prelude to Ashes on ebook, so that one kind of counts because I was reading it with my eyes instead of my ears. But the only book that I physically read and finished was Seekers: The Winds of Change by Troy Knowlton. This is a self-published book, again in SPF B09, and this is one that he sent me, I don't remember, last year sometime, I think. And I told him, I don't know when I'm going to get to this, but I will do an honest review of it once I have read it. And he said, that's fine. So I wasn't worried about it, but the opportunity came up for me to read it, and it was a good opportunity, and so I took it. And I really enjoyed a lot of aspects of it. It's not my favorite of all time, again, but there's a lot of things in it that I really like, and I am excited to see where he goes with this series, because I love the setting, and I love a lot of the world things that he's set up, and I want to see where he takes this world. So I'm excited to continue reading these books once he writes more of them. I've got two more here. So I've got Master and Commander by, who is this by? This is the first book in the
Starts with a B.
I think it does.
I can't place it.
I can't even remember what the series is.
Oh no.
Aubrey and Maturin #1. Patrick O'Brien. So you were close.
No, I was thinking of Carry On, Mr. Babbage.
Oh yeah, that's a different guy. But Master and Commander is the first book in the Aubrey and Maturin series. This is like a 10-book series or a 14-book series or something like that of historical fiction. They're seafaring. The Aubrey is the captain of a British ship. The type of ship it is, I'm not going to get into because I don't understand nautical terminology well enough, and they make a big point of discussing it in the book, so you can just read the book and find out. But it was really enjoyable. I loved just getting to sit back and go on this nautical adventure with these British Navy members. And it was really fun. I love the movie that the Russell Crowe and who's the other guy? He plays Vision. Paul Bettany. The movie that was made, I don't know, in 2000s, early 2000s, 2007 or something like that. I really liked that movie, and I finally went and read the book because it was available when I wanted it. No, it wasn't. I put it on hold. But it came available and I got to read it. So anyways, I don't really I'm kind of rambling about it, so I will move on to the last book, which is The Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is a reread. The Andy Serkis narration was recently released of this book, so I bought it and I got a chance to read it in July. So it's the last audiobook that I listened to in July. It's the last book that I finished in July, and I just, every time I reread The Silmarillion, I find more, and I start to understand more about it. I get to, the pieces go together and click together in ways that I didn't remember about. Besides that, one of the other major things that I noticed is how little detail is in some of these stories. Specifically, what is it titled in here? Of Turin Turambar. So that tells essentially his story, the same story that is in The Children of Húrin, which is the full tale of Nani hin Húrin, the tale of the Children of Húrin. And there was so little detail in that, and so since I have the other two great tales, which is The Fall of Gondolin and Beren and Luthien, I want to go read those because I know there's going to be so much more detail in those than was in this, just in the Silmarillion, and that's all that I know is from the Silmarillion. So that's, I like the Silmarillion, I like Tolkien. I don't really need to say any more about that, but I had a good reading month. I was kind of forced to read them all, but that's alright. So, thank you guys for watching an Erudite Adventure. We post videos every Monday and Thursday, and have our social medias linked in the description down below. We'll see you guys again soon. Stay warm.